Welcome, everyone. This is the IWP Setup and Best Practices workshop for October 2025. I am Shards632, a mentor in the MHCP, currently acting as the IWP West Coast Regional Sales Rep for you all. And so today we're going to basically talk about all the various things you can do with IWP setup. There's a lot of different ways to do IWP these days. And so this talk is going to be mainly about trying to explain and deconfuse, all of those different ways of doing things, and also point out the many, many, many different corner cases, shortcomings, bugs, even in the current system that you should be aware of so that you don't run afoul of them when you're trying to set up IWP. Some key takeaways. I hope that out of this talk, which is, again, there's a lot of information in this talk, but you'll be able to pick the correct selling mechanism for your type of item you're selling and the skill level you have, especially around TypeScript. You should be able to learn how to respond to item purchases via events. You should be able to sell things either using meta credits or your own in-world currency for most things. And then if you want to make your own custom selling experience, I have at the end just a couple of brief slides about like how to go deeper and use the API to sell stuff entirely using like custom UI or something like that without using any of the built-in gizmos. All right, so the agenda. So we're going to talk about definitions around IWP in world items. There's a lot of different things. So I want to kind of lay some groundwork, some terms. We're going to talk about some of the restrictions and bugs that there exist right now with in-world purchase stuff. We're going to talk about how to create items. We're going to talk about the kinds of shop and inventory settings you can set on your world so that when people are visiting your world, they have certain experiences. Then we're going to go into how to actually sell things using the IWP gizmo for spatial sales, the world shop gizmo, which can be spatial or an overlay. And then there's a shop asset, which is only overlay. And then you can also give people in-world items through quest completion as rewards. And then finally, like as I mentioned earlier, a way to sell things for meta credits using TypeScript and a way to grant items to people using TypeScript. And then we'll have a Q&A. All right, so I'm going to dive into some definitions. So people mostly say IWP. That stands for in-world purchasable. But there's also sort of this other term that Meta uses in a lot of places, which is an in-world item or an IWI. And it's basically an item that can be added to a player's inventory. Not everything that gets added to the player's inventory is necessarily purchased. And so I think this is why they have this distinction between an IWI, which is an item that may not have a cost associated with it, than an IWP, which is like something that can be purchased with meta credits. And this IWI versus IWP distinction comes into play a couple times when choosing which mechanism you're going to use to sell your items. So granting is basically process of placing an IWI into a player's inventory, and that can be through purchasing or through quest rewards or through scripts. A durable item is something that's permanently granted to the player one time. So once they have it, like they can't purchase it again. There's only just the one durable item. A consumable is an item that can be temporarily granted multiple times and can have an item count associated with it in the player's inventory. So it can go up and down. So, these could be like health potions, or it could be like currency, coins, or something like that. It can go all the way down to 0, in which case it disappears from the inventory. Or it can go up to any value. Then an item pack, it's a collection of specific consumable items at different price points. So like you could have a consumable item for like a health potion, but then you could make then it costs 25 credits, but then you could have a item pack, which is of 5 consumable potions, health potions, and they might be only 50 credits. So like, one is 25 credits, but 5 of them is 50 credits. So it's like great for volume discounts if you want to really kind of drive people to buy more consumable items. Then finally, an avatar item is a specific kind of durable item, so durable, permanently granted, that is associated with an avatar. And currently, the only avatar items we have are clothing. So when you make clothing, then you can, they're a certain kind of. There's no way to do test purchases via the IWP seller gizmo, the shop asset, or scripts using the desktop editor or the web. It's only possible in VR and in mobile for some people. Like I'm able to do it, but other people say they're not able to do it in mobile, so I'm not sure why. The test purchase is available to the creator of the world, and it should be available to every MHCP editor of the world. I think if you're not an MHCP member, you might not be able to do test purchases, even if you're an editor on the world. The one exception to this is that you can test purchase using the World Shop gizmo on the desktop editor and web, as well as mobile and VR. There's no way to do a test purchase of avatar items that you created, because you can only test purchase things that you don't already own. And for whatever reason, when you create avatar clothing, Meta already gives you a copy of the clothing, so you already own it, and there's no way to not own it. And thus, there's no way to do a test purchase of avatar clothing items that you created. But if you have an MHCP editor in your world, they can test purchase your clothing, and then they can also, return them to the store when they're done if they want. So if you want to do test purchases of clothing, you'll need to get someone else to do the test purchase of your clothing for you. There's no way to delete an in-world item that has ever been granted to a player, even in test purchases. Like once someone has ever been granted it, like you can't delete it, it won't let you. And so you can end up with an accumulation of junk commerce items in your menu that you can't get rid of. There's no way to view the inventory on the desktop editor, which is unfortunate because you spend most of your time in the desktop editor working on things, but it's only available on the web, in VR, and mobile. There's some bugs in the API. So there's this API called World Inventory Get Player Entitlement Quantity, and it tells you how many of a thing someone has, like how many consumable items, or whether they have or don't have some durable item. And it returns a big int, even though the API says it returns a number. And so make sure that with the value you get back from this, you turn it into a number using the number constructor, or else you're going to have weird bugs that don't make sense. This is sort of a minor issue. If you are going to deal with durable commerce items that have assets attached, that means that players can spawn them out of the inventory, and you'll need to find out when that's happening. And the definition of the on-player spawned item event in the API is incorrect. It doesn't actually work, and you'll need to define your own, and it has the signature. All right, so I'm going to jump into creating commerce items. So this is easy to find. It's under the systems menu. It's the commerce submenu. And then you push this little plus icon here, and you can create either in-world items, item packs, or you can list avatar items. So we're going to go first through in-world items. This is showing, and then this little drop down here lets you pick whether you're showing your in-world items or your item packs or your commerce items. So there's like 3 different sets of things you can show, and there's using this little plus, there's 3 different things you can, yes, Shard's going. There's 3 different things you can add. So first of all, we're just going to talk about the most basic item, which is the in-world item. This is like the basic building block for all of your durable and consumable items. So first of all, there's a name. Keep it short. It's used in the UI, and if it's too long, it gets ellipsized. And it's also going to be part of the SKU string. So like, just keep it short. Try to be very succinct with these item names. The description is where you should go into detail and explain why people should buy this. You have a very long field here that you can put a whole bunch of text into. There's a thumbnail you can add. It's optional, but I highly recommend you put one in. It has to be a JPEG for whatever reason, not a PNG, because it appears different places in the UI. And so you'll want to have one so that it shows up. All of mine have, I put thumbnails on all of mine. Just makes it easier for the player to realize what this thing is. The meta credits, you get to say how many meta credit, if this is purchasable with meta credits, and how many. So You can now say that things are not purchasable with meta credits, so that they can only be sold through using, your own in-world currency, or as a reward for quests or something like that, or with script grants. So that's sort of a newish feature where you can choose whether it's purchasable with meta credits or not. If you do say it's purchasable with meta credits, then you have to say how many meta credits, and the minimum number is 25. And of all of the items about in-world items, this is the only thing you can change later, is the amount of meta credits. Everything else is fixed, and you can't change it once you create the item. So just be aware, like the name, description, thumbnail, item type, like all these other things, you only get one chance to set them. The meta credit, though, you can change the price, or you can make it use meta credits or not use meta credits later if you want. So this is the only one right now that can be changed. And then finally, for in-world items, you have to choose whether it's a durable item, which talked about once, which talked about before, which was something that's only granted one time, or it's a consumable item, which means that you can grant many of them. People can use them up and they can get more. They can have many of them at a time, like if they have 12 of them, and then use them one by one. So anyway, consumables are for things like health potions or coins or things like that. A durable might be like a sword or something like that, something that they buy and then they have. For durable items, you can set an asset reference that players can spawn on their own at any time out of the inventory that's associated with this IWI. I don't recommend that you attach asset references to durables unless you really understand the spawning implications, because it's complicated. Then consumables have this auto use, and this is only applicable when they're being purchased with meta credits. And it basically is whether this in-world item goes into the player's inventory or is it automatically consumed upon purchase. You can't view the status of whether you chose auto use or not later. And you obviously, as I said, you can't change it later, but you can't even tell after you've made the item if did I configure this auto consume or not. Like there's no way to tell other than like trying it out and seeing if it auto consumes or not. So just be aware that this information is invisible once you set it. And just also be aware that like inventory-based consumables, like non-auto consumed consumables, are a little tricky to manage. You have to do some special things to make them work. So just be aware that like you'll need to add some extra code. It's not a lot, but it's just some extra code to deal with non-auto consumed, because non-auto consumed consumables go into the inventory and the player does something. They click on them to consume them later, or you can have scripts that consume them later. All right, so now there's two other kinds of commerce items that I mentioned. There's the in-world item packs, and this is sort of the example of creating one of them. You have to have already created a consumable item, back here, in order to create an item pack. So, and it only works for consumable items. They're kind of grouped together in the UI by the consumable item. They can only be sold for meta credits. Even if the original item was not for sale with meta credits, the item packs can only be sold with meta credits. You can only put 99 items in a pack, just seems sort of oddly limiting, especially if you wanted to have like in-world currency and you wanted to give someone like 5,000 coins. Like you can't make an item pack of 5,000 coins, and I don't know why. You can set the quantity price points you want. So like this is, like I was saying earlier, is great for volume discounts. You can have like the potion for 25 and then you can get 3 potions for 50 or whatever. But auto consumed consumables are not good candidates for packs. And this is because of the hidden event SKU I mentioned earlier for packs. It just, world cubes, you cannot make 100 coin item. You can make an item that's 100 coins, but you're going to have to do your own special processing to give them the coins, and you cannot have packs of packs. So just one comment here, like auto-consumed consumables are not good candidates for packs because like they have this special events queue, and when someone buys a pack that's auto-consumable, you're going to get an event for the auto consumption of the pack and not for the auto consumption of each of the individual items in the pack, which is very confusing. So you have to like add a bunch of special code to deal with auto consumptions of packs of consumables. So I generally would not recommend it unless you have some special use case. And then finally, the last commerce item you can make is an avatar item. And so this is the avatar item configuration screen here. You must separately create and price your avatar items in the Web Horizon Creator Portal, which is this URL here. There's whole videos on clothing creation and pricing. I just linked to I think this is one of Space Glitter's videos here. So if you want to learn all about clothing stuff, go there. So all avatar items are currently durable, and they all must be sold for no less than 75 credits. That's just the restriction right now. So just be aware that those are some limits. So basically, once you've configured your avatar items in the portal, then you can add them to the world by going, and this dialog shows you all, I think it shows you the last, I don't know, 10 or 50 or I don't know, some number of items that you made, and then you can just click and add them to the world. I think you can search for them and find the items you want. And then you just click the little checkbox, and then they get added as sellable items in your world. You have to add the item to your world in order for you to sell it in your world. Right, so that's all about how to create items. Eventually, you're going to publish your world, and I just wanted to quickly touch on how you can adjust a few things with how people interact with your items when you're in your published world, and that's in the published world settings. There are these two items here, the default in-world shop and the in-world inventory items. So the first one, the default in-world shop, it's only for VR, but if it's enabled, VR users can see every item you have configured for sale in your world, even if you don't have it in any shop gizmo or sellable gizmo or anything. So if you want to have some sort of curated store experience where you want to have really guide people to like a nice view of what's for sale, you probably don't want this. You probably don't want to show this. This is sort of if you just have like a ton of stuff and you just don't really want to have a curated store experience, you just want people to look through the UI only in VR, then maybe this is for you. The other is the in-world inventory items. So this is for everybody, except for desktop editor. And it allows players to bring up a system UI to see what items they have, like what durable items they have and what consumable items they have. And it's like a sub menu under the backpack item in the UI. So if you various places on web, on mobile and web and VR, the backpack items in different places. But if you click on it, then you can see the in-world items menu. And you can disable this if you want. Because you might have some sort of custom inventory UI that you want to have rather than using the default system one. Meta Horizons provides an inventory asset that I'm just linking to the document here that describes how it works that you might want to use instead of using the built-in system UI. And as I mentioned earlier, that the non-auto consume consumables that are in the system inventory require special handling to be consumed by a player. So we'll talk about that just a bit. All right, so this is the shop inventory. Just set these two things before you publish. Next, we're going to talk about so now if you've made your items and you've configured your world when it's published to have, whenever you get around to publishing, to list them, to let people interact with them the way you want. Now you actually have to sell them. So there's a few different ways to sell them or provide them to people. I think there's more or less 5 different ways. But the most simple by far is the in-world purchase gizmo. It's like a gizmo. You can get it out of the build menu, just drop it in the world. That's the easiest way, but you can only sell things that have meta credits attached to them. If you didn't say that this was a meta credit item, then you can't sell it with the seller gizmo. So it's only meta credit items. Also, it only works in VR and mobile, but not in the web and not in the desktop editor. You just get a dialog that says you can't buy things on those platforms. So the first thing you select is purchase category. This may or may not be visible to people. I think that some people see this IWP thing, but you definitely want to select the IWP purchase category. And then you'll have an in-world item, and you basically pick from this drop-down list from the list of in-world items that you want to sell. It can be IWPs, it can be item packs, and it can be avatar items. So you can just like pick whatever you want from that list. So all three of the item types, so long as they have meta credits attached to them, can be posted here. And then this UI property field here is pretty important because it defaults to trigger, which has no UI. So basically it's just this yellow box. And if the player, interacts with the yellow box, then it will cause the purchase dialog to pop up. And so you might want the button or you might want the icon. And the button is probably, in my opinion, the most preferable because it shows a little meta credits icon and then the cost in meta credits. The icon just shows the meta credit icon with no cost. So the trigger one's only useful maybe if you're like doing your own UI, or it's like a board or it's a texture and, you just want to put this invisible trigger over a place where someone would like reach into in VR or click on in mobile to like pretend to be clicking on a button in your sort of static texture to buy something. That would be the case for using the trigger one. Otherwise, I think probably the button one is the best one to use here. So more things about the seller gizmo. So there's a number of code blocks events that tell you about things that are happening. So when someone starts purchasing an item, you get this item purchase start event. And it tells you that the checkout flow process is beginning, which is like a system dialog. And it tells you which player and what item they're purchasing. And then there's also an item purchase complete event, and that tells you the checkout flow has completed. And it gives you the same player, the same item, and then the Boolean true false of whether they succeeded or not at purchasing it. They might not have succeeded in purchasing if they aborted or they didn't have enough money or something like that. So as I mentioned earlier, you must have an IWP seller gizmo for this SKU somewhere in the world in order to get the on item purchase complete event. If you don't, it just won't be delivered. So if you're using the IWP seller gizmo, obviously you have one configured. But if you use one of the other mechanisms like the shop gizmo or the shop asset or scripted sales, you need to make sure you also have an IWP seller gizmo somewhere configured for the SKU. If it's a consumable item, there's also some other events that you get, which are on item consume start and on items consume complete. So this consume start event, as I was mentioning earlier, when players are trying to consume something from their inventory, this is sent only for those things that are in the inventory when someone tries to consume them from their inventory on their own. It's not sent for auto-consumed items. It tells you the player and the item that's trying to be consumed, and then you must approve that consumption with code by calling world inventory consume item for player, and then you pass the player and the SKU here, or the consume from the inventory just will fail. It just won't do anything at all. Finally, on item consume complete, when someone consumes an item either from the inventory or if it's auto consumed, you'll get this event also. And it tells you the player, the item SKU, and the success flag. And so just as a reminder, if you have auto-consumed item packs, the item here is going to be the pack SKU and not the individual item SKU, which can be confusing. But if you're having items that are in the inventory, even if you sold them as a pack and they were non-auto-consumed, so like you had a pack of 5 pieces of meat, and the 5 pieces of meat went into the inventory, and then the player went to their inventory and they clicked on it and they said consume, then you'll get the consume start for the meat, and then if you approve it saying yes, the player can consume this now, then you'll get a consume complete, and this item SKU here will be the individual meat SKU and not the pack SKU. So once they go into the inventory, they turn into individual items. So just be aware of those little subtleties, so people will be able to see this. So here are, for instance, 3 seller gizmos. The gizmo itself is just this like yellow box. I actually placed a mesh asset in here, and I placed like a picture in here and a picture in here. So these are just these pictures are not automatic. These are like things I actually added myself to make it so I could tell what they were. And for each one of these, I've got the seller gizmo, I've got it set to button. If I set it to trigger, it's like doesn't have anything. Icon has the icon, whatever. So I have the seller gizmos. I also, as I mentioned, I have a bunch of other things for sale. So I have a bunch of other seller gizmos up here that, like, this is for the packs of 10 coins, This is for the packs of 50 coins, the 99 coins, the 10 packs of potions, the 5 packs of potions. I have these all for all of them, so I can get events for all of the packs being sold, as well as, I have meat for sale and diamonds, and the formal splinter is one of the IWP items. So one of the clothing items that I have for sale, but I have to like make a seller gizmo for all these things, and then like they're way up high, so no one can reach them. But if I don't have a seller gizmo with all these different things configured in them, then I just won't get those purchase complete events for them. So anyway, just want to kind of give you a quick view of this is what the seller gizmos look like. And if you where my avatar is, where am I facing? Okay. So like here, you can't actually see the triggers, but if I interact with this, I'm on the desktop editor, so yay, I can't actually buy them. So fun. All right. So going back to the presentation now. Next way to sell things is the World Shop Gizmo. It's a system style window. It looks very official because it's the official Gizmo. So it's very nicely, it's great. It's really well integrated into the system. You can sell up to 20 items with 4 per row. It has a scrolling list, so you can scroll more. You can sell it with meta credits or in-world currency. But if you have something you said is for sale with meta credits, you can only sell it for meta credits. You can't like also sell it for your in-world currency. So this shop gizmo is a little bit more restrictive than some of the other mechanisms that we'll talk about later. Like this potion, I said it's 25 meta credits. I can only sell it for meta credits in here. These bread, I made it not have any meta credit associated with it, and so I can now sell this for shards coins. So you do have to your meta credit that if you're going to use your own currency with the shop gizmo, that currency must also be an in-world item. So like these shards coins are also in-world items that you can buy with meta credits, that then you can use those shards coins to buy the bread. So interestingly, this has both a spatial and an overlay mode. It works in both web, mobile, and VR. Like this is one of the rare ones that works in web. And actually it works in the desktop editor too, I think. And the VR mode, the overlay works in VR mode too. So like this one works in all of the places, but you can only sell consumable items. You cannot sell anything durable, and that includes clothing. It only supports consumables for whatever reason. You can have this, you can see how many meta credits you have up here. If you do have some in-world currency, you can see how many of the in-world currency you have here. It's just pulling all these images, from the commerce configuration system. So it's a really nice gizmo. The big downside is that it can't sell durable items for some reason. So how do you configure this thing? This is just a picture of the configuration screen. It's got a title to say what it's called. The number of items you want to sell can be up to 20. If you make this smaller than the current configured number of items, like it just forgets, so the larger number of items. So make sure you don't shrink this accidentally. The item balance, if you have like in-world currency, that's attached to some commerce item, you can put that in the balance up in the upper right. You can display the meta credit balance in the upper right. It has light and dark mode. And then the spatial mode is, whether it's a spatial UI or an overlay UI. A spatial UI just means it's like something in the world and you walk up to it. And then an overlay is, overlay mode is like where it's attached to the player screen and it's invisible by default. And in order to make the overlay visible to somebody, you have to call this special API set shop overlay visible to make it visible or invisible to specific players. So like if you do go and choose the overlay mode, you got to use the special API to show it. All right, so the shop gizmo continued. For each of the items you're selling in the shop, you have the item here. It's just a drop-down list and you pick the item from your in-world items. Again, it must be a consumable item or an item pack, which is also consumable. And then if the item you chose is not for sale with meta credits, then you get some more things that you can fill in, such as the quantity of items that are for sale, what currency is used to redeem it, which is another in-world item, and then how many of those coins it takes to redeem this item. So you can see here, this bread item is not available for meta credits, but you can buy one of them for 5 shards coins. This potion is for sale with meta credits, so you can't adjust this. This potion pack is also available with meta credits, so you can't adjust that. This bread item, you can get 10 of them for 25 shards coins. This has some purchase confirmation funniness for any items that are purchased with meta credits. You will get on item purchase start and on item purchase complete code block events. I still think you need to have an IDP seller gizmo somewhere in the world if you want to get that purchase complete event though. So it also broadcasts a special network event when there's a successful purchase, and it's called the in-world shop helters player purchase item event. And this will tell you if they're purchasing it with meta credits or they're purchasing it with in-world currency. And this is actually the only way to find out when they've purchased something with the shop gizmo using in-world currency. It tells you the player ID, not the player, the shop ID, which is the entity ID of the shop gizmo, but for whatever reason, they gave it as a number, but the entity ID is a bigint, so just be aware that the types don't exactly match. This consumed item SKU, this is like, if it wasn't in-world currency, this would be like the coin SKU. And if you use meta credits, then this is just not set. And then the cost in meta credits or the currency, and then the thing that was purchased, and then the number of things that were purchased. Right, so that's how you find out when things are bought for the shop gizmo. For meta credit things, you get these normal purchase start complete events. For in-world currency things, you get this in-world shop helters on player purchase item event broadcast network event. All right, so go really quickly jump into the world here. So I have, for instance, here is a shop gizmo. This one's a spatial one, and I have some stuff configured. This one up here floating in the sky, I just put it in the sky because it's an overlay one. So I just put it up there so you won't won't be in the way. But if you go and you walk up to this guy and you want to purchase something, you go and you purchase it. Interestingly, this gizmo works in the desktop editor. It's the only one that works, but you can then test purchase it. Has some very weird behavior. But if you go and look at what happened, we started purchasing the potion, and then this is the special shop gizmo event. No currency specified because I used meta credit. Amount cost 25, and then purchase complete. And then because this was an auto consumable, it consumed it right away, so that you got the auto consume event. Likewise, we can go and we could purchase some bread. Oops, that might not happen. Don't have enough resources for that. Let me purchase some more coins. Just gonna test purchase the coins. Very strange UI experience there. Now I should be able to purchase coins. Went up to 100, buy some bread. I acquired 10 bread. So if we go look over in the events, we can see I bought a pack of 99 coins. So again, the sort of weird event styling of the packs is strange. Then this is me buying the bread, 10 of them using the shop currency, 20 amount of 25 coins. So that's how you could find out that someone bought something from the shop gizmo. Likewise, I mentioned there's an overlay. This is just displaying the overlay, and this is the different one. It's got all the same sort of things where you can purchase stuff. And why my mouse went away. There we go. Test purchase 5 meat packs, so meaty. And anyways, now I've got those. Unfortunately, you can't inventory on the desktop editor to see that I now have those 5 meat packs in my inventory, but they're there. All right, so we're just blasting through. We've got a few more things to go through, and then we'll get to some Q&A. The next way to sell things is with the shop asset. And so this is available from the public asset library. You can just set the search filter to Meta Horizons. This is from Meta. That's an interactive asset. And you want to pull this one into the world, the colored one, there are two other gray sort of subsidiary assets that have shop in the name that are right next to it that look very similar, but they're gray. You don't want those ones because those are internal. You want to pull this one in. Very similar to the shop gizmo in its appearance. Configuration is also very similar to the shop gizmo. It can sell both durable and consumable items, including clothing, but it cannot sell item packs for some reason. It's only available as an overlay UI. It puts this little grocery bag icon in the upper right corner of your screen, and if you click on it, it shows the shop overlay. You possibly, if you're really good at TypeScript and custom UI, you could maybe refactor this into a spatial UI, but it would be a bunch of work. It comes out of the box supporting up to 8 items, but you could probably add some more items if with some minor code changes. It does not work in VR. It only works in mobile. So, and it doesn't work in web. So it would be a lot of work to make this thing work in VR because you'd have to change the way the shop button works to be an interactive blocking screen overlay. And then that would cause it to not work with web and mobile. So you'd have to do some really weird bifurcated experience to make this thing work for both VR and for mobile. So that's the downside. Anyway, configuration, it's very similar configuration for the gizmo. Like there's the ID, which is a string ID. So this is passed in events, so you can find out what shop gizmo is being used. Displayed name, a title icon. If you want a little icon that looks like a shop, the soft currency SKU, and for the coin, if you're using in-world currency, then you have to provide your own thumbnail for the coin because it's not able to pull it out of the commerce configuration. So you'll just have to make your own texture asset for that if you want to show that. And then the item configuration, again, it's very similar to the shop gizmo. You put the SKU in, there's no drop-down list here, you have to put the SKU in. You have to put the thumbnail of the thing yourself in there because it's not able to get it from the commerce itself. And then the cost SKU and the cost quantity, these are if you're using your in-world currency, like the shards coin, to sell things, you can say how many, which currency it is and how much it costs. So examples of these guys, it is possible to override the, you can use other, I believe that with this one, you can use your own in-world currency for an item, even if it has a meta credit cost, you can just ignore that and then use your own currency with this one. So, which is slightly different than what you can do with the shop gizmo. So, anyway, configuration, purchase confirmation. Again, if you buy something with meta credits, you get the normal code block events for on item purchase start and on item purchase complete. But if you're purchasing using your own in-world currency, it broadcasts this network event, which is not a code block event. And unfortunately, they didn't export this from their scripts, but it's called shop events.receipt, and it has the player, the idea of the shop, the item, which is this really complicated item description structure, which is also not exported from the shop. So you probably want to edit the asset and export these things, but it's basically a subset of it's a superset of the IWB in-world purchasable data structure, which has all kinds of information about what the SKU is and the quantity and a bunch of other things. And then this result, which tells you whether it was successfully purchased, if it was an in-world item, in-world currency purchased item, or if it was being purchased for meta credits, it just tells you that it went off to launch the checkout flow. So just so you'll have to then go and monitor these item purchase complete events yourself. So really quickly, we'll look at that. This is right here at the top. This is the shop asset that I dragged in. You can see the configuration that we looked at earlier. If we jump into the world, so up in the corner here, where's my mouse? This is the little shopping bag icon it puts. You click on that, then it pops up this UI, and then you can buy things. But unfortunately, it doesn't work in the desktop editor. So I think it will probably work for, I probably can buy things that don't use meta credits. with the desktop editor. Maybe. Yeah, bread purchased. So I was able to buy that. It's just only the meta credit purchases for this that don't work in the desktop editor. All right, now in the home stretch here, quest completion. So you can configure quests to grant in-world items, but you can only grant simple items. You can, no item packs, no avatar item clothing right now, although maybe they'll be adding that soon. You can grant either durable items or consumable items, but auto-consumed consumables as rewards are risky because it's possible that the player will not redeem it right away, and then it's just kind of lost if they don't redeem it right away. There's no way to really for them to really get the auto-consumed consumable. It's only really good for durable and non-auto-consumed consumables. I do have an example of an auto-consumable in here, but it's tricky to use. So, these items can be either things that cost meta credits or things that didn't cost meta credits. You can use it for simple quests or tracked quests. And importantly, that thumbnail for your item will appear in the quest board as the thing that they can get. And when the person does redeem their reward for the quest, like there's this whole dramatic animation that happens. So it's kind of a bit much, but it is there. So for configuring this, when you're configuring your quest, there's just a line item there, and you just pick the IWI item you want to reward the player when they complete the quest. And you can change it to a different reward later too, if you want, and it will update the icon. But there's some issues. If you go to configure your quests before you've configured the commerce items, you won't see the reward item in the configuration page. So you have to make your commerce items first before going to the quest board to create or edit the reward item. So you can't create the quest first and then go and add the commerce items and then go back and edit the quest and add the reward item, but you won't see the menu item until the commerce items exist. And also, once you set a reward item, you can't unset it to nothing. It's always going to have a reward item of some sort. So like sort of a one-way path. Like once you start giving reward items for the quest, you can't like unset that. And then finally, there's no way to know when a player actually accepts the reward. I mean, you'll find out when they complete the quest, but you won't know when they've actually accepted the reward and it's gone into their inventory. There's no event for that. So you'll just have to kind of pull their entitlements periodically and see if it shows up there. And that's the only way you can really tell that they actually redeemed the reward. So a little bit iffy. They can redeem it right away. There's a little pop-up and they can click OK and redeem it right away. And I assume most people will just do that. So most likely it will end up in their inventory right away. And then finally, the last items, scripted purchase with meta credits. So you can launch the checkout flow using in-world purchase launch checkout flow with a player and a SKU, and you can use this to get IWPs, item packs, and avatar items. You have to use the right event SKU though in this API. So you'll have to have gotten that from somewhere. Either for IWPs, you can just copy it out of and in-world items, you can just copy it right out of the UI. But for item packs and avatar clothing, you'll have to do that whole thing where you have to watch someone buy it and then log it to the console and then copy it out of the console. But you can purchase durable and consumable things that used meta credits. And this really is for if you want to build your own whole custom shop UI using custom UI, and you want to have complete control over how all the checkout process works. Like this is the thing to use for you. And as before, it's a launch checkout flow. You pass the player, you pass the SKU. And then likewise, you can get item purchase complete events. This is just an example of showing like listening for an item purchase being completed. Just listen for this code block event, and then it will tell you if it's successfully completed or not. And again, reminder that you must have an in-world purchase gizmo in the world somewhere matching the SKU, or you won't get this complete event. And then finally, scripted item grants. Like sometimes you don't want to sell things to people, you just want to give it to them. So you have this grant item to player API, and You can only grant simple items though. You can't grant them item packs, and you can't grant them avatar clothing. But it can be a durable or consumable. You can grant both of those things. You can grant it whether it requires meta credits to buy it normally or doesn't require meta credits. And again, this is, if you're building your own in-world currency system and you want to like keep track of their currency with PPVs rather than with other IWIs, this might be the way to like deduct money from their PPV and then grant them the item. And the API is very simple. It's just grant item to player, give it the player, the SKU that you want, which again has to be the event SKU, and then the quantity you're going to give them. If it's a consumable, you might give them like 10 of something, but optionally, this just defaults to one thing if you don't specify it. And you need this SKU in order to use scripted purchase flow or to confirm purchase using on purchase item complete or auto consumption if it's an auto consumed item using on consume item complete. And there's no way to get this event SKU anywhere in the UI other than like observing someone making a purchase attempt for that item and then logging the value to the debug console and then copying it out of the debug console. It's the only way to get the event SKU for item packs. Avatar items have an event SKU that does not match the avatar item SKU that you can obtain from the commerce menu. So on the commerce menu, there's a little button to click to copy the avatar item SKU, and you can also go to the creator portal and get the avatar item SKU from there. But that is not the event SKU. The event SKUs for avatar items look like this: the item name and then the 8-digit hex number. Whereas the SKUs you get from the UI are the creator's name and then there's a really, really, really long number. So again, like with item packs, these event SKUs for clothing are required if you want to use the shop gizmo to sell clothing, you want to use scripted purchase flow, or you want to confirm the purchase of clothing using item purchase complete events. So, and it's the same mechanism for item packs. You have to basically observe someone purchasing the item, log it to the console log, and then copy and paste it out so that then you can use that event SKU for avatar items elsewhere. Thanks a lot, everyone. I will see you next time.